I want to just start off by saying a huge thank you to everyone who is with us today. It is the holiday season. We're very aware that it's super difficult to plan anything now, and also with COVID raging around. We really appreciate everyone's time, and I hope this will be a fruitful, interesting discussion. So first I'll introduce myself. I am Olivia. I'm the head of content and communications at OKX, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. So my first order of business is I'll go ahead and introduce the panelists. So today we're talking about, I'm sure you're all aware, we're talking about NFTs. We're kind of trying to just look back and reflect on this really explosive year for the NFT space. And we are joined by two very incredible special guests, and I'm super, super happy to have them with us. I'll start with Maliha Abidi. She's an artist, an author, and a creator of an NFT collection called Women Rise. Maliha, could you go ahead and intro yourself a little bit?
Hi, Olivia. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm really grateful. So my name is Maliha Abidi. I'm an artist, an author, and an activist, and the creator of Women Rise. And I've been a traditional artist for the past 9 years, creating for women's rights, girls' education, and mental health. I've been able to work with organizations and companies such as the New York Times, Adobe, Google, Malala Fund, the Girl Effect, and various others, again, for anything focused on women's rights, girls' education, mental health. Basically, I campaign through my art, and that sometimes includes fundraising, campaigning to change laws, or just spreading awareness and getting or mobilizing communities. And that's basically what my work is focused on.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for being with us today. Our other guest panelist is Nicole Sales. So Nicole is also from the art world, but from the sort of business side. She's the business director of digital art and NFT sales. Is that the right title? Digital art and NFT sales at Christie's, a very obviously renowned auction house. Nicole, please do a better job introducing yourself than me.
Thanks, Olivia, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm excited to speak with all of you today. So I'm Nicole. I've been at Christie's for almost 10 years now, predominantly in the contemporary art department. I've held various business side roles, overseeing our private sales division as well as our online sales division. Before that, I was in client strategy and more data analytics for art market. And now for the past year almost, I've been, as Olivia said, the business director for digital art sales and NFTs. We've obviously had a crazy year, and I'm sure we'll get more into this, but Christie's has learned a lot, and I've learned a lot personally in the past year. So it's been really fun to get involved in this space and really be leading what Christie's is doing on our side.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being with us. So in the interest of time, so we can jump right in, I'm just going to quickly introduce the rest of the panelists who are from OKX. And that is Adam James and Hunain Nasir. They are senior editors. And Rick Delaney is our senior analyst. So, and I'm also on the Insights team. And we basically create all of the reports and research and analysis content from OKX. To kick off the discussion, I'm going to pass the mic to Adam to just sort of set the stage with NFTs this year.
Hi, thanks, Olivia. So yeah, I mean, to start with a cliche, like if you don't really know what NFTs are, I think at this point, then you've probably been living under a rock or something like that, because they have really taken off this year specifically. They've really exploded into the mainstream. We saw them featured on SNL pretty early in the year, Saturday Night Live. And now, I mean, it's hard to go anywhere without seeing a celebrity launching their own NFT project, or the former First Lady Melania Trump has an NFT project that was just announced last week. So it's really like everywhere. And just real quick though, for anybody who doesn't really know what an NFT is, a simple explanation is that it's something that exists on a blockchain that is unique. So whether that, and not interchangeable with something else. So for example, it could be a piece of digital art that exists on the blockchain, or it could be a certificate of ownership or a certificate of authenticity for a physical piece of art, or it could be a digital trading card or a deed to a piece of real estate. There's really a lot of things that can be considered NFTs, but primarily they're just exactly what the name implies, a non-fungible token that exists on the blockchain. So, and with that, I'll pass it back to Olivia.
Yeah, we were joking before, like when you define non-fungible token, then you have to get into like what is a token, and then you have to get into what is blockchain. But we're gonna leave it at that for now, so that we can dive into some of the more pertinent questions today. So, though, as Adam said, like obviously there's a lot of use cases for NFTs. One of the areas we're really seeing explosive growth is the art world, and we're so excited to have our two guest panelists be from that world. So I want to start there. For some context, again, with like NFTs and art and how big this is, recently news came out that Christie's overall sales in 2021 broke records totaling $7.1 billion in art, and about just over 2% of that, so that's nearly $150 million, was actually from the sale of NFTs specifically. So that's just like, wanted to give some numbers to frame how big this is. So one of my first questions is actually for Nicole. I want to ask you, since you're at the front line right now, as you mentioned in your intro, communicating between artists and buyers in the NFT space, and Christie's is really one of the leading the charge, one of the auction houses leading the charge there. Could you kind of reflect on like what prompted the NFT space to expand so rapidly this year? And I can kind of ask another part of the question, what prompted Christie's to get into it?
Yeah, just like to reiterate what you said earlier. I mean, just in general, the art world really exploded this year. Inflation definitely helps when you in any sort of hard asset market, but particularly the art world, there was really good supply coming out of the height of the pandemic. A lot of people in 2020, in terms of selling, didn't want to sell their greatest paintings, sculptures, whatever it may be, for fear of uncertainty. And 2021 saw a little bit of a reprieve from that. Thus creating an incredibly rich market, not to mention the fact that, income inequality, broke, created an even bigger divide during COVID. But that aside, the 7.1 billion is really a fantastic year for us. 150 million of that from NFTs is really exciting. And I'll even throw another stat out there before I get into your question, is just under 8% of the contemporary art sales globally were from NFTs. So it's even more when you zoom in on the contemporary art market, because 7.1 billion also includes our handbags and our wine and our luxury market kind of sales as well. So yeah, I mean it's been a wild year. So back in October of 2020, Christie sold a Robert Allis physical painting that was accompanied by an NFT. And Maker's Place, a platform for selling NFTs, saw that we did that, reached out to us in early 2021. And that's how we kind of cooked up the Beeple Everyday's idea back in March. So they approached us, seeing that we had done something with NFTs back before. And then we kind of partnered together to select the Everyday's work and work with Mike Winkleman for that. And then so when we auctioned that in March, we had absolutely no idea how high it was going to go. Some people were saying to us, "Oh, we think it's going to hit $1 million," and we were like, "Whoa, no way! There's no way this could hit $1 million. That's crazy." So we, that was we were the first major auction house to sell purely digital art, so just the NFT. So that when that sale happened, just being totally transparent, that is what prompted Christie's to get more involved. We had a $69 million sale, and we said, we have to invest more in this. There's clearly a market. There's clearly energy here. So that's when we kind of went all in, myself and my colleague Noah Davis. So at the time, so before March, like I said earlier, I was kind of overseeing our online sales from a business perspective. Noah was overseeing online sales from the art perspective, artist kind of relationship perspective. And, so that's how we kind of both fell into this situation. I think the pandemic, in terms of in general, why NFTs boomed so much, I think the pandemic certainly helped escalate anything and everything digital during this time. So, forums such as Clubhouse back in the day, enhanced the relationship between creator and collector, and really helped to further kind of the knowledge around this space. So I think hopefully that answers your question as to why the growth and why Christie is so exciting here.
So like, obviously not all NFTs are equal, and not all NFTs are equal in terms of value or just any metric. But as a renowned auction house, Christie's has to play a role in approaching the question of like what makes art in general valuable, what makes it good potentially. It's really philosophical question, but I'm just curious, like, how do you approach that question with NFTs, knowing that we're dealing with things ranging from something like Beeple to a rock or a digital whatever, just some random thing, or like a black screen with white text, right? So I'm just curious what your take on that is, like, how do we decide which NFTs are good enough for Christie's, for example?
Yeah, so I think there's several criteria that we look at. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from how we would judge tangible art or physical art that we're selling. I mean, a lot of times you can walk into Christie's and say, I could do that. Like, why are you selling that? This is terrible. But, at the end of the day, we are, again, being totally upfront. We give the market what they want. We sell the best of the best in any category, whether it's a handbag, whether it's an ancient Ming vase, whether it's a Basquiat painting or an NFT. So, I think in terms of the criteria that we look at there, any market history, however recent, even if it's, a couple weeks, market trends in terms of price, historical price comparables, how the community is supporting the digital creator and the project manager, or, the project in and of itself is kind of a new criteria that we have. Obviously, we don't have, this artist has been in X number of museum exhibitions, or, this is what the art historical, discourse is about this artist. So we don't have that sort of thing. But, we have community, we have market trends, market, historical prices, and we have just the general aesthetic in and of itself. I mean, Christie's we have over 250 years of aesthetic curation, so to speak. So, I think we'd like to think that we have some level of, aesthetic way to judge what these digital artworks look like. And, I'll just add, there's a bit of a difference between the collectibles projects and the one-of-one digital art works. I think in the collectibles project, my personal opinion, it's a little bit more, speculative and investment. It's, about community. It's about what else you get when buying something like this. There's like a community around it that you're kind of buying into, whereas digital art is a little bit more in line with what Christie's is very experienced and very good at doing, is, presenting the best artworks to collectibles and being a discerning eye in a market that is incredibly saturated.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I want to sort of switch gears and direct a question to Maliha, a little bit more on the activist side of things, activism side. As we know, NFTs, can have, as Nicole mentioned, they have a lot of uses in terms of like building community and bringing people into the space, the crypto space, for example. So my question is the following. According to the United Nations Technology Agency, less than half of women worldwide use the internet, compared to 55% of men. So there's a gap. And the gap is much wider in poorer countries. How do you think that the blockchain movement and maybe NFTs in particular could help to close the gender gap?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I feel like it needs to start with, we need to kind of look at things very holistically. It needs to start with increasing literacy around, just about technology firstly. So not directly like jumping into blockchain, but also maybe, like in the areas where you see a huge digital divide, you will also see that there's a lack of education for girls and women. There's like, there are lesser opportunities for them to maybe go and have a job, or there's sometimes no opportunities at all, or maybe there are like cultural things that they're dealing with. So you cannot kind of like just think about, oh, how do we take blockchain to them, or how do we kind of invite them into blockchain. It's more like, how do we take the steps that will help the community overall in terms of education, in terms of reaching financial independence, whether that's through jobs, or whether that's like just educating women and girls in those communities, or everyone in that community. And that will lead them to blockchain, because blockchain today we have like few people in it, tomorrow it will be everybody, right? And because that will be the norm. But there is still, like in today's world where you have an Instagram, I have an Instagram, we are all used to Web2. There are millions and millions of people who don't even have access to Wi-Fi. So we're already stepping into Web3, but there are many people around the world who don't have access to it. So it needs to start with education about technology, increasing literacy around technology, but also creating incentives. Like, why wouldn't a family want to get involved in this if they knew that it will lead them to financial independence, or why wouldn't a woman want to get a job in blockchain if she knew that she would be able to sustain her family, her children. There's so many women, single moms out there, many in various communities as well, where unfortunately, if men are the breadwinners, they go outside of their home, they do get attacked, they end up losing their lives. Women are left with this burden of financial burden, but also grieving a loved one, and they don't have any access to, like, how do they make money now? So I think blockchain can be such a powerful tool in liberating families around the world in the most marginalized communities. It's all about, like, firstly thinking about how do we bridge the digital gap, digital divide. How do we take the educational resources to people, and what are the incentives we set? Because incentives is very, very clear. There's a lot of money in this space, and we just need to tell people that, okay, there's a lot of money in here. You don't have to have, like, a tech degree from MIT to get into this space. Here are examples of artists, architects, musicians, collectors, so community builders, all kinds of people in this space. It's not just like one sort of a profession that's in here. So there's a space for you as well. But it does start with education, because even for a person who's very used to Instagram, Facebook, Web2, even for them, a conversation about blockchain can be very, very overwhelming. So we need to start with education firstly, and then we can talk about incentives and inviting them, and kind of like take those steps into making sure that we include the most marginalized in the blockchain movement as well.
Thank you. Yeah. And in terms of education, I know you're working on a project specifically focused on education and Web3. Could you just briefly intro that?
With Women Rise, we're building the first school in the metaverse for the most marginalized students around the world. I say students, but they have never had access to education. So it's for the 258 million children who are currently out of school, and the pandemic just made it worse for them. So it's not for students who have access to education, who were able to continue education even with the pandemic. It's for children who never had access to education. But through the school in the metaverse, they won't have to rely on a physical building. They won't have to rely on physical books. They will have access to global teachers. Also, this idea was partially inspired by the Afghan girls who haven't had their human right to get an education for more than 80 days now. And these are the, like, I didn't have to fight for my right to go to a school. You don't have to fight for that. These are things that are very normal to us because that's a human right that we have. But again, 258 million children around the world, boys and girls, they don't have that. So That's the idea behind the school in the metaverse.
So like a little bit related to like how this technology can be empowering, I just wanted to bring it back a little bit to NFTs and your role as a creator. Do you I think in general, there's a lot of skepticism around this phenomenon, especially as it's exploded this past year. So I just wanted to hear your take from the creator side. How do you think that like NFTs are changing being an artist, for example? What's sort of positive to come out of that?
I feel like NFTs are a liberating movement, a revolution for artists. Artists no longer have to bargain with people. Firstly, art in general, like if you're buying a piece of art as a person, like you're buying a piece of art, that's a luxury to you. For the artist, that's how they are surviving. That's how so you don't actually have to own a piece of art, but they have to charge for their art because so that they can pay the bills and make a living. So NFTs are definitely a revolution for artists. I also think that they no longer have to kind of get rejected by galleries, or galleries are taking huge cuts, or they're getting charged to pay us this amount of money and be a part of our show. At the end of the day, nobody's buying their work over there because that's the real scam. So I think NFTs, I think what people are kind of scared of is how artists are getting the power to kind of own their own work and have a direct relationship with their collectors and removing the middleman. And I think that's the main thing that's making people scared. And there are a lot of people who are just kind of hearing this, that, oh, NFTs are a scam. And then they're like, oh yeah, NFTs are a scam. They're not really thinking about it. Like they're kind of having this mob mentality that, oh, I see other people say it, so I'm going to say it because it makes me sound cool, or it makes me sound progressive. Whereas you're creating a mental barrier for yourself. People who are in Web3, they are in Web3. They're doing the things, they're doing things for themselves. They're doing things for their families, their communities, their artwork. But you're just creating a mental barrier for yourself. But also, I think there's also like an environmental aspect to it, where why people are getting like a bit, they're thinking about NFTs in a negative way. But again, there's a lot of misinformation out there. You're only creating a mental barrier for yourself, just make sure that you're doing your research, you're reading up on it, that, okay, if there is an environmental impact, is it more than the shirt that I'm wearing? Or is it more than that Zoom call? Or is it more than, me being on Instagram and scrolling? Or how much is it? Because the impact is like, you're talking, if you're talking about blockchain, then yeah, even like entire blockchain has, I don't want to I want people to like Google this and look at the actual number. And I think, and also, let's say if you're really against Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFTs, there are alternate blockchains. Go create on Tezos, go create on Palm, go create on Voice HQ. There's so many other platforms that you can kind of go and explore. So you don't have to create that mental barrier for yourself, because you're missing out on a great opportunity. Yeah, so that's what I kind of want to say to people who are feeling a bit skeptical about this. One more thing, if you're actually such an activist against the blockchain, go fight with the crypto billionaires first instead of attacking the artists who are just trying to kind of pay the bills, because yeah, that doesn't make you seem very nice. Artists are just trying to honestly like just make a living. Yeah. that's the last thing I wanted to quickly say.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm really happy you brought that up. I kind of wanted to transition into that actually now. The concept of NFTs are bad for the environment is one of the common misconceptions or common criticisms of the space. And we see these similar criticisms about Bitcoin and in general about crypto. So it really helps that you've set up that context. I think what I'd love to do now is just like jump into some more of those common criticisms, because when we talk about NFTs, and sort of the point of today's panel is to get into this, we, if we're in the space, in the industry, we're kind of maybe like all in agreement about certain things, and we all kind of like maybe are on the same page relatively. But many people approaching this for the first time, reading about it in media, reading the headlines about these sales. I mean, they don't have the context to be able to know what is like a misconception or maybe misinformation a little bit, or maybe taken out of context. So that's what I want to dig into now. So one of the other kind of big stereotypes about NFTs is basically this question of like, what's the difference between the NFT of like a digital image and just the digital image on the internet? And it's kind of referred to as like the right click save argument. So I don't know, Hunain, I know you have some thoughts on this. So I just want to pass it to you to kind of take on that big misconception.
Sure. Yeah, that's a very interesting kind of like a question. I actually have two questions, kind of like a two-tiered thing, and Maliha can probably answer them as well. So firstly, as an artist of 9 years, like you said, you see the opportunities that the NFT space kind of opens up for artists, and you get a lot of platforms and visibility that you wouldn't otherwise get very easily. But that accessibility also kind of extends to, I would say, people, anybody really though, right? So anybody can come out and just make a doodle, for example, or make a rock like Olivia mentioned earlier, and kind of put it out there and take that attention, potentially that attention away from somebody who would have put more work into it, or is more experienced, or is like an artist of 9 or 10 years. So there is kind of like this net negative, I don't know if this is a negative effect or not, but I would like your comments on whether you think that this openness, it should be uncontrolled entirely, or should there be some kind of curation? And if there should be some curation, who decides, and kind of like, is that against the spirit of decentralization? I mean, how do you compete in such a noisy space? And we saw this with Web 2.0, when everybody became publisher, and now there's just so much content out there that you need aggregation services, and it's just very difficult to be heard, even if you're really talented. So how do you kind of, like as an artist, how do you see that?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question, and I think the best way to kind of deal with that is let the people decide, let the collectors decide, honestly, because I honestly don't even think that the space is noisy enough yet. I think we're just kind of at the very beginning of it. We're going to have more people, more new artists. Every day I'm meeting people who very recently became artists, but that's a beautiful thing, because this space kind of helped them take their dream of being an artist from the back burner to just all about it now. But for the people who are pretending to be artists, I feel like the people out there who are either looking to support artists, or looking to or they're art lovers, I feel like they're the ones who are going to decide, because like you mentioned, Web 2, right? There were a lot of people who just all of a sudden became photographers. They bought DSLRs, and there was like an entire thing on Facebook and Instagram. I remember that very, very vividly. But eventually they didn't stick with it. They didn't kind of like, I don't see the same people being photographers. I don't see the same people being in the creative field. They moved on to something else because they got bored of it, and it was just kind of like a trend for them. Whereas the artists were doing it with all their hearts, and they're exploring. Because the thing is, if you see a new artist in this space, maybe they're just starting off their journey, and we cannot kind of tell whether they're pretending or they're actually into it, so we kind of need to wait and see. But I think it's the collectors, and I think that's the beauty of decentralized internet, where people are deciding, right? So it's kind of like, I mean, I see many talented artists every day feeling discouraged because they haven't made a sale. But then I was recently having a conversation with an artist, and they were like, I haven't made a sale. I feel so, I feel so sad about it. And I'm like, okay, how long have you been in this space? They were like, man, I started posting in November. I was like, you're still going to make it sooner than what you will in traditional field. Like, it took me 6 years to go commercial. It took me like 6 years to go commercial into a traditional field, even though I had opportunities before. But it's just like, in the NFT space is going to happen sooner for you, but I think it's going to be the people who are going to decide, okay, this is an artwork and this is an artist that I resonate with. Because I personally think it's not just the artwork, if I'm being honest, it's the person behind it as well, and it's the community surrounding that. I think that's what people connect more to than a piece of art, because an artist's artwork can keep on evolving, but it's like what do you connect with the most? So I think it's the people that will decide that.
I mean, I think it's a great point, because even looking at a specific sort of community, let's say crypto Twitter, like I can think of just off the top of my head around like 4 to 5 people who are sort of in my network that I know were able to quit their like normal job, their day job, and actually make a living just by doing their own digital art. And a lot of that was because of the community, right? So they got a lot of community support, a lot of sort of crypto native support from people who liked the style of their art or something. And you know, and they would make images based off of different individuals in the community, which would gain more attention. And you know, and they would do a lot of it for free, but people would pay whatever they felt is fair for it. I've done it with some people I would consider my friends as well. Like they would make an image that was representative of my sort of crypto Twitter persona, and then I would just pay them something that I thought was fair. And it's really cool that to see that sort of community support arise like natively without the need for marketing or any of these traditional ways.
Yeah, sure. And the second tier of my question was, so and like you mentioned, you know, it's kind of like about the connection with the artist. When we look at, for example, movies and music and then art, I think art in itself is probably the easiest to kind of, digital art is the easiest to kind of copy with the right click and save thing. And with music also, you probably have to download it from somewhere, and that site can be kind of taken down, or that file can be taken down. Same with the movies. But with an image, as long as it's on your screen, you can just screenshot it, right? Even if you can't right click and save. So as an artist, like, how do you see, you know, moving forward, how do you compete with that, or how do you combat that, or do you even need to combat that? Does it dilute the value of what you do? Does it dilute the value of limited collections or limited pieces of artwork that you do? How do you see that?
I mean, plagiarism is something, even before I entered the NFT space, or somebody just stealing the artwork, like it did impact me a lot as an artist. Like there was 6 months where I stopped like creating art just because I was so discouraged by somebody copying my artwork, and I was like, why did I even like try? I should have just copied somebody else. Like this person copied me, you know, what's the point in trying? But I think there are two different things, right? So there's the right click save argument, where it's like, oh, so why do I have to pay millions of dollars to own this? You know, why can't, firstly, not all NFTs are millions of dollars, you know, there are normal price NFTs as well. But the right click save thing is like, if you take a picture with a car that's parked outside, you have a picture with that car isn't yours. So same with, like, you know, if you take a picture with a pretty house, you have a picture with that house, you don't own the house. So same with the NFT, it's you have a copy of that NFT as a, you know, as a screenshot or something, but you don't own the NFT. Same with, like, you know, you can go to Paris, take a picture of Mona Lisa, you don't own it. So one thing is that, you know, it's like the ownership, right? So it's like whether you actually own a piece by that artist that, you know, that somebody else actually owns. Another thing is, from an artist perspective, if somebody just kind of like saves, screenshots my work, puts it on a Rarible or OpenSea and tries to sell it, firstly, I think that's where kind of like, and I have done that for other artists, where I saw somebody else steal a fellow artist's work, put it on OpenSea. OpenSea didn't take it down. I think it's and I reported them to OpenSea, and I messaged that person as well that this is my friend's work, you need to take it down. And they did. Like they actually, like, they got spooked and they were like, okay, like I'm gonna take it out. I think it's a collective responsibility of platforms and the community to kind of hold these bad actors accountable, that, okay, like what you're doing is not okay, we see you, and, you know, that's gonna help keep the space a bit more honest, I guess. But in terms of like just screenshotting some work and putting it out there for sales, and that's actually a scam, that has been happening in the real world as well. So if I create an oil painting and I am selling that oil painting, a person who knows how to paint and doesn't have a vision can still copy my oil painting, even though it's not a digital painting. So copying or plagiarizing creative work isn't limited to the NFT space, and there are measures that need to be taken. And like I said, like specifically in the NFT space, like for example, OpenSea needs to make it a bit more accessible for people to quickly report these accounts. I mean, I'm a creator of a collection. We have like 4 different profiles of the same collection where people are copying that, you know, but we make sure actively that as soon as we spot a new collection, we're reporting it. We're making sure that we're posting in our Discord and our Twitter and, you know, making our community aware of that. And our community members do the same. So, you know, these are the kind of things that you need to do. Unfortunately, these things are not limited to the NFT space.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Right.
add just really quickly, I think there's plagiarism and you know, in every form of creative process, like you said, you know, working in the traditional art world for so long, like there's, you know, there's authentication processes, there's, you know, artist estates that we go through, there's due diligence processes, there's all of that as being a platform for which to sell. I do want to just say that does require some centralization and some sort of body that is helping that. So, you know, you can't really rely on everyone necessarily. So I think there is definitely needs to be some sort of happy medium between, you know, adhering to the themes and visions of decentralization, but also helping, you know, keep the positive nature of that, because as the bigger that this gets, by the law of numbers, there's more bad actors that exist. So you do need some sort of body like that. And then also, I will also add that I think it's, as people become more digitally literate and data literate in terms of doing due diligence from a data perspective on blockchain and looking at these things, it's even easier to tell fakes, so to speak, because you can see who minted it, you can see the provenance, you can see when it was minted. So, you know, it's almost easier, I think, to catch these things in the blockchain, which is another big positive of the space.
Yeah, and I agree completely, because I was going to bring up an example of just even like not necessarily like traditional art or high value art or something like that, but like trading cards, for example. Like if you want to buy like Magic the Gathering trading cards or Pokemon trading cards or whatever, people fake those all the time and sell them on eBay. And, you know, and then depending on how high value that is, like you have to send it off to a service, you have to mail it there, keep it protected, they will authenticate it for you, all this stuff. And, you know, that's a whole process that costs a lot of money, that has an environmental impact, everything. Whereas an NFT, yeah, I mean, with a little bit of digital literacy, you can verify yourself whether it's real or not and cut out that entire process. So definitely one of the big bonuses of NFTs.
Okay, I want to take this natural pause to switch gears again slightly. Rick, I want to ask you to kind of go into a little bit about like NFT use cases outside of art, since we've been really focused on art, which makes sense for all the reasons you said. But yeah, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, Adam touched on it in the intro. You know, there's a lot of, we're just at the beginning of this like explosion of potential use cases for what is essentially a brand new tech, which is just a non-fungible token, something, a blockchain-based token that represents something unique. And, you know, that can be a unique piece of artwork, could be tickets to an event, access to online clubs, NFTs as digital wearables. We've just recently had Nike buy Artifact, which is a digital wearables company. I think that's a strong indication of where the technology is going to go. I can foresee in the future participants in various online worlds, whether they be defined as metaverses or whether they're defined as traditional online games. You know, the appeal of player skins in Fortnite, they provide no tangible gameplay benefit, but they're super popular, and that's the way the company makes all its money from that game. Now imagine when those skins are made by Nike, when it's Nike Air Max that you can walk around, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, whatever video game. I can see that being super, super popular. Then, of course, you've got other styles of in-game items. Like at the moment, OKX is quite focused on the GameFi use case of NFTs, and that's a proven concept from earlier video games. Like World of Warcraft was a classic for high-value digital items, and World of Warcraft were quite against, trading of these items. But you could a secondary black market of trading emerged, which the game developer really didn't like, but it still happened because the players wanted it. You get guys selling digital swords to other players that possess a unique item, digital sword that has a certain attributes that make your player stronger in battle, and they might finish playing the game. They decide they don't like World of Warcraft anymore. They've still got this super valuable item, but what can they do with it? With an NFT based item, it becomes really easy to say, I no longer like this game, but pass this item on to somebody else in the community. And yeah, I think maybe some of the use cases today might well be a fad. I don't really necessarily think that selling a digital monkey for millions of dollars is necessarily sustainable. But if the market's there, and it clearly is, then who is to really police what an individual, a sovereign individual, can spend their money on? I think over the next few years, we're going to see a hell of a lot of innovation surrounding NFTs that aren't necessarily right-click and savable.
No, I think, yeah, it's super interesting. I think we're coming to kind of a theme of like, though we have some centralized bodies be able to make judgments about like, or be able to filter the space and help avoid plagiarism, or even like Christie's role or something like that. We also, the theme I'm hearing from everyone is just like, because of that direct to consumer built-in nature of NFTs, or direct to fan or direct to collector, whatever you want to call it, there's just like a kind of the market will decide mentality that is just playing out right now, that we're seeing. That's like such an interesting dynamic and a unique, it seems like, a new phenomenon, unique dynamic. We are running out of time. I do wonder if we want to just dive a little bit deeper into the other big misconception, myth, or criticism of NFTs, which Maliha already brought up, which is the environmental impact. It's a big one. It's a huge sort of topic in crypto in general, as I mentioned before. Adam, do you want to kind of set the stage for that?
I really liked what Maliha said about like prioritizing, environmental impact based off of everything. So to tie, I guess, two of these topics together, looking at NFTs in video games, very recently, sort of this past week, in the last 2 weeks, major top tier video game publishers such as Ubisoft and some other games announced that they were going to sort of implement NFTs into their games. And there was a very, very big pushback that I would sort of argue has been sort of media-led, like video game media-led pushback against NFTs, primarily because of environmental concerns. And this led to a large pushback from gamers, to the point where some games sort of immediately walked back their plans and said, okay, we're listening to you and we're not going to do it. And this is like, I think this sort of misinformation might be the most damaging thing for NFTs right now, because generally speaking, like a big video game publisher, like top tier publisher, they are a 100% profit driven business. Like they only care about making money, and video games is sort of the vehicle how they do this. So by having more NFTs in the video game industry, that would, because it's a hyper competitive marketplace, that would make more of the big corporations sort of have to take notice and have to implement NFTs, which would, in theory, if implemented correctly, put value back in the hands of the consumer, back in the hands of the player. Because if you play a game a long time, you develop a collection of high value in-game items, and then you want to sell those, then the player can benefit monetarily from that time spent playing the video game. So to see this pushback, it's sort of alarming because it's primarily driven by the environment. And I really liked Maliha's point. Like, let's say you're a gamer, which I am. Like, what is the environmental impact of the video game industry, of your time spent playing video games, the resources used for video game development, and where does blockchain technology rank in that? What about the clothes you're wearing? What about if you are a digital art collector? What's the environmental impact of traditional art, sourcing rare materials, for example, and these sort of things? So yeah, just to wrap up my thoughts, I think that it really is about looking at everything. Like, how much energy does the traditional financial system use? How much energy does sort of everything you do in life? How would you rank that? And then where do NFTs fit into that? And then if you can identify that, maybe a more constructive conversation could take place, as opposed to just we're boiling the oceans by minting NFTs.
I want to second everything Adam said, but also wanted to add that if anything, the blockchain technology and the innovation that's taking place in this space is helping us do more research on how we can make sustainable differences in the world overall and not just in this space. So, you know, it's like there's a lot of innovation happening. I don't think stopping it is the way to go.
I also want to add that we're super early in the technology, just in the grand scheme of things. And there's a lot of really smart people in this space working on it. And the more innovation that occurs and the more people that are encouraged to, join the space and work on it, the quicker we will get to a more environmentally safer blockchain.
Any last thoughts on that or anything before we do the Q&A section?
I'd just say that it's seems to be a case of different groups attempting to play energy police, and what's valuable to one person that isn't valuable to somebody else. And to add another point to the discussion, the energy consumption isn't really the big issue. The big issue is the mix of fuels used to power that energy consumption, and that's just a reflection of the mix of fuels that we use as a society, and that's a problem, but who's to judge which high energy use case is valid and which isn't?
Yeah, thank you guys. Really, really awesome, interesting discussion. Time flies when you're discussing NFTs. So I want to give a little bit of time for the Q&A, as we're almost at an hour here. So I'm going to jump into that and we can maybe discuss the questions around that. So thank you so much to Georgina from South China Morning Post for posting a question in the Q&A box, and also letting us know about these questions ahead of time. So there are two questions here. One is for Maliha, one is for Nicole. So I'll start with Maliha. So do you view that an NFT should be owned by the highest bidder through an auction, or should there be a certain floor price that enables broader ownership in line with Women's Rise's equality ethos?
I think it's a wonderful question. I personally think it depends on the kind of project it is and what the artist envisions for it. I have seen artists put their work for auction, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, just because that's what they want to do with their work and that's how they want their work to be collected. And also auctions can be really good for, let's say, charity. If you're like fundraising for something, right? So it could be a great way to kind of raise the maximum amount of money instead of just setting a price. But in terms of let's say for a collection, or an artist just putting a collection out there, again, it's the artist, what do you want to kind of do if you want to make it affordable, but what is affordable, right? Like sometimes even $100 isn't affordable for a lot of people. So whereas, you know, some people may argue, okay, $1,500 for an art piece sounds about right, you know. So there's that, it's kind of like, what is affordability? I do feel like that some of the really hyped up projects, people don't, the community at large doesn't feel that they can tap in. So I think in those projects, the creators and the founders should take some steps in order to make sure that the entire community is feeling like it's accessible to them, and not just kind of, you know, for example, with the Adidas one, right? The gas prices were all over the place. There were, you know, just really big names who could really afford it or even get in. So, you know, those kind of things, maybe people who were really excited about it were unable to get into it. And I mean, there are a lot of collections out there like that. But if you're actually talking about like trading and making money as well, so I think, which is a profession in itself in this industry. So I feel like, yeah, if it's like an overhyped project and you know there's a lot of interest, maybe as a founder, as a creator, it is your job to perhaps somehow take some measures and make it accessible to as many people as possible. But I think in this industry, there needs to be both. There needs to be a floor price that's affordable to everyone. And auctions, like I said, like it's a great way to fundraise, or it's completely up to the artist as well, how they kind of want to, you know, they kind of want to give their work to the collector.
So the next question from Georgina for Nicole is, Nicole, do you see that the value of NFTs is going through a phase of speculation on the back of, quote, a digital asset bubble building up? Or do you expect that NFTs have sustainable intrinsic value and that the level of transaction prices achieved earlier this year could sustain for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think there's a lot of talk about, are we in a bubble? Are we not? You know, I think we're still super early, that we're still in the price discovery phase of this. I think there are certain projects that we're going to look back on and say, wow, I can't believe those people bought that for that much money in 2021. And there's going to be some projects that people are going to say, oh my God, I can't believe I got this for so cheap in 2021. So I think, you know, we're definitely very early. I think there is definitely intrinsic value to digital art. I think the NFT technology is just the certificate of authenticity and the creation of digital scarcity that's associated with the actual digital piece of art. So I think the way that the artist is creating digital art is just another medium that's going to, you know, say, you know, Impressionism started in the 1880s because of XYZ. Digital art is, you know, art created in this sort of medium started in 2021 because of ABC. And I think, yes, there's a definitely intrinsic value. I think the price is sustained. The prices that were achieved earlier this year, if you're specifically talking about the $69 million people work, I think there will be works here and there that sell for extremely high prices. That's just like any collectibles market, any art market. And, you know, Jeff Koons, there's Picasso, there's, you know, Basquiat, you know, there's these things, these artists have value, and you know, you can go into a whole philosophical conversation of what is value, but it's really just, if you put it up for auction and there's a free market, how much are people willing to sell, people willing to buy for it? If you have two competitive people willing to pay pretty much the same price, that's what's going to basically decide on a value here. So I think we'll see. I do not think we're in a bubble, to answer your question directly. I think we are in a price discovery, more of a boom situation, and it will even out. And I think some collections will be sustained, and the inherent works that are aesthetically great are gonna sustain, and then others are gonna fall down, just like any sort of market.
Yeah, I just want to touch on that too. I think I am in total agreement, and I think we already went through a phase that maybe could potentially be described as a mini bubble of sorts, but not necessarily for the whole NFT market, but just like when things were really popular, like I know myself and other colleagues and whatnot, like there was a period where it was like, you know, what are we minting today? Like what, you know, what's coming out today? And that has led to myself, and I'm sure many other people, owning a bunch of stuff on OpenSea that they now put in like their hidden collection, because it's like this stuff is like really bad. It's like, why did I even pay for it? Because there was certainly a period where it was like, I'm going to speculate on anything. So I do think we've gotten past that and are in a more sort of mature price discovery phase now of more valuable things. I think there's less speculation towards like totally random, like daily mints and drops and whatnot. And people are now looking at more things that are maybe more kind of universally acknowledged as being like valuable works of art or valuable for any other reason.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot more artists just that we're talking to being a little bit more thoughtful about, why am I minting this? Like, why am I doing this as an NFT? Like, is there a reason, or am I just, what's the point of having this technology related to my art? So I think there's a little bit more sophistication in terms of the products coming out.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting to see what's going to happen in 2022. It's been such a very explosive year for this space. So I kind of have a last question from Molly Zuckerman from CoinMarketCap. It's a good question to end on, I think, unless it goes somewhere else. But basically, thank you, Molly, for the question. It's basically like, as we now go off into the holidays and hopefully are seeing friends and loved ones, what is everyone's one sentence explainer of NFTs that you're going to be using during the holidays? Let's just go around.
I can start.
Thanks, Nicole.
So, I mean, I guess it depends on how articulate your family is, but I'll go on the presumption that yours are as naive as mine. So my one sentence explanation is, an NFT is a digital ownership token that exists on the blockchain which is a digital ledger that points to any asset, which is typically a digital asset, which can be a piece of art, can be music, can be kind of anything that creates scarcity and creates digital ownership and authenticity.
Anyone else want to go for it?
Yeah, no, that's a bit of a tough one. But I have already explained to a lot of people what Bitcoin is. So I'm just going to tell them it's like Bitcoin, but it comes with things that you can own. And it's like a collectible Bitcoin that is unique to you when you get it.
My cousin, like a while ago, he used to be one of those people where he like literally pulled his hair out in front of like the entire family. Why you guys are not listening to me about Bitcoin? I assume, Hunain, you're from a South Asian descent, like a South Asian background as well. It's very difficult to explain these things to South Asians. So I think I'm just going to I don't think it's going to be a one-liner. I think I'll have to scream a few times and they'll probably ignore me the first few times. And I'll just say, I don't know, here's some art that can make you some money, something like that, just to, something of that sort. And if that intrigues them, and if they ask me more questions, then I'll go more into detail that, it's a data stored on the blockchain, here how it works. And yeah, but I need to come up with a strategy. It cannot be a one sentence thing.
We all need our strategy for working in crypto. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
I would say the world's going digital. People like collecting, add those two together, digital collectibles. That's all you need to know.
So now that almost everyone said their one-liner, I think mine would be summarizing all of your, something like the unique collectible digital item. I probably wouldn't even say blockchain, but maybe a blockchain, because then people see how it's connected to like the industry we work in.
I like all of yours better than mine, so I'll steal several of these.
Adam, are you just not going to talk to anyone?
Well, yeah, I was going to take it a slightly different. I mean, aside from what I said in like the intro, which is probably what my one-liner would be, outside of my kind of immediate family who all knows what I do, if anyone else really asks, I usually just give them like a dishonest answer that has nothing to do with like cryptocurrency. Like I just say like, oh, I work in tech, or like I work in finance or something, like something that sounds kind of boring, so that they're not really interested. Or if like it's someone who knows me a bit better, I guess, and they push a little bit harder, then and really want to know about NFTs, I'd either give like kind of the one line explanation I gave in the beginning, or I guess I would try to really get into the, depending on how interested they really are, get into like the nitty gritty of like why the blockchain is valuable for proving authenticity of a digital token and this sort of thing. But otherwise, I just kind of like pretend I work in some other field.
It's always how it is. It's hard. Well, actually, a little party favor from today's lovely event is that we'll be sending everyone a one-pager that Rick put together, and well, really the whole team worked on, that is like trying to condense what is an NFT, or just NFTs in a one-pager. Just something to have, maybe your guide for talking to people over the holidays. But yeah, I think we are definitely at time. So I'll just close it out. But I just really want to say, like, this is so fun, and I feel like we could continue this conversation for a lot longer than an hour, but in the interest of respecting everyone's time, that'll be it for today. And just a huge thank you to Maliha and Nicole for joining us, for bringing your expertise and insights and experiences. This has really just been fascinating. And yeah, I hope that we can continue this series and do these kinds of events more frequently. It's nice to meet virtually. As annoying as it is easier than meeting in person. So thank you, and thank you, Insights team. And yeah, appreciate it, everyone.
Thank you for
And
having
thank
me.
you.
So fun.
Thank you to everyone who attended. Sorry, yeah. Thank you to everyone who attended, especially for your questions and just being here during the holidays. And yeah, sorry to interrupt. That's all.
Thank you so much, Olivia. Thank you. You did such an amazing job at moderating the session. And yeah, it was just so much fun talking to everyone and just hearing different perspectives. I definitely learned a lot as well. So I'm just super grateful to be here. And yeah, thank you everyone who was listening in as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
We'll head
everybody. Thank you,
out.
Nicole.
Have a
Thanks,
great
Maliha.
holiday.